Welcome into Game Night Live Rewind's lacrosse video. Dane, Stewart, Tim Haslem from the Utah Lax Report. And been a couple weeks since we've talked lacrosse here, Tim. Let's start. When we last talked, Corner Canyon was going out of state, Park City going out of state, Brighton going out of state, all playing teams regionally, California, Colorado. Let's start with how things went. Start with Corner Canyon.
Yeah, Corner Canyon, they played 3 out-of-state games in the last couple of weeks. They first traveled to Cherry Creek. They met Cherry Creek. Cherry Creek's in Denver. Cherry Creek traveled 2 hours west. Corner Canyon traveled 6 hours east, all in one day to abide by the rules. They play that game, they win. Great game, excellent showing for Utah. Maybe the biggest win in Utah high school lacrosse history. And then a couple weeks ago on their spring break, they were in Southern California. Newport Beach is where they headquartered. They played Mater Dei, which is a great team, storied athletic program. Won that game, and then the next night they turned around and played Corona Del Mar. Corona Del Mar got the best of them in double overtime, but there's no shame in that. They've got some great players. It was a great showing for Utah.
To give you an idea, Mater Dei, top 25 team nationally. Max Preps had them at number 1 in the country. I think there's probably a couple of asterisks with that, but these are 2 programs that top programs in the West and programs that get some national notoriety. So the fact that Corner Canyon goes and splits it, the loss coming in double overtime, it's a pretty good showing from the Chargers.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot to consider there. One is that second game was the night after.
Yeah.
So less than 24 hours later, they're playing another great team. And that's exhausting, Dane, to be completely honest with you, no matter who you are. But, yeah, just a great showing from the Chargers. Super proud of their effort. I talked to Coach Ika. He was very pleased with their effort. And going out of state, Dane, it's just a whole nother dynamic. Right? And it's something that I think every team should try to do. I know it's not always possible for some teams, but it's definitely something that should be on people's radars because it helps your team so much.
We also want to tip the cap Park City. Look, they had a couple games. They went to Colorado, took on Cherry Creek, lost that one, played Valor Christian, lost to Valor Christian as well. But look, competitive games against those two. We saw Corner, who I think we both acknowledged the best team in the state by a way, and Park City was still competitive with Cherry Creek, competitive with Valor Christian. Brighton as well, went out of state, went down to California. They came up on the short end of games in California as well. But these programs, kind of taking the flag for the state of Utah, going throughout the region and trying to really bolster, the reputation of lacrosse here in the state and doing a good job.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see, Park City, obviously a ski town, kind of going to the other Colorado ski towns, It's exciting to see. Congrats to Brighton, too, for making that happen, like you said, on the losing end of both of those games. But still, it's good to get the state of Utah represented out of state.
And some of it is just learning how other states play and, kind of getting outside of your own backyard and getting familiar with different style, different system.
Different referees, which is, I know, a big topic, just playing a different climate, the sea level in California, right? And so just, like you said, different styles. It makes you a better, more well-rounded athlete.
Being in football is like, we know what that's like. I mean, for years I'd go to Texas, Florida. It is different rules. It's different construct. And, doesn't mean that they were any worse. They were still dominative. And so anyway, want to tip the cap. There's a lot of opportunity out there, different states throughout the region, and we'll see as this sport continues to grow here in the state. I think more programs will do that. But Tim, look, we've got a couple weeks left in the season. We want to update you on some region races going on. Let's start in Region 1. Davis, the team that's looking like they've got a multi-car length lead here near the final lap.
Yeah, definitely. I was at their game this week when they played Fremont. It was a 1-goal game. The last 3 contests with Fremont have been a 1-goal game with them, and so just exciting to watch. But definitely the favorites there. They beat Fremont twice. Fremont probably the second best. Weber may have a claim on that, but Davis definitely the clear favorite in that region.
How about the scoring for Davis? I mean, Rhett Rice, Emmett Rice, and then kind of a return come home, right? Sure. And so they've got a number of guys that can find the back of the net.
They do. The player that we talked about was Eli Greenway, just a great player, getting his first action at the high school level due to transfers and eligibility and stuff like that. And just exciting to see him perform, And then their defense has some nice players, some nice pieces. And their LSM, Emerson Bell, is a fantastic player as well. So it's fun to watch the darts. We'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah. We'll hop to Region 3, and this one a little bit tighter, right? And we kind of bypassed Weber and Farmington, a couple teams to watch up in that Region 1, Fremont as well. But talk about Region 3. Look, Mountain Ridge, Bingham, I think those were probably the 2 teams preseason most thought would be competitive for that region championship. Mountain Ridge got the best of Bingham 13-11 in their first matchup. They got the return game coming later. But those two have been kind of the stand-aparts here in Region 3.
And that's what we thought coming in. Mountain Ridge is new to that region. They were a 5A school last year, and so going to that region, you never really know, but we kind of had an idea that would be the case, and clearly the favorites there. I'm excited for that return match. And then it's fun to watch like the Copper Hills and the Rivertons. We did their game a couple weeks ago, and just competitive teams, fun lacrosse, fun to watch.
Can't sleep on them. I mean, that Riverton team.
Yeah, got some good players.
Yeah, they do. Let's hop to Region 4. We're down at Lone Peak. We're covering Lone Peak, American Fork tonight. Obviously, the region that Corner Canyon owns, right? And I think if Corner Canyon even lost a game in this region, it'd be shocking. But after Corner Canyon, you have AF. You have Lone Peak. How about Westlake? The Thunder have put some scare in Region 4 play. This is a deep region.
Absolutely. Last year we had there was a scenario where it was the playoffs were seeded a little differently.
Yeah.
There was a scenario where this region would have produced champions in all three of those brackets, if you remember right. And so Pleasant Grove won the Class C last year.
Yep.
And so again, you're right. It's absolutely a deep region. Westlake taking American Fork to overtime last week.
Yeah.
And just a great team. They cracked the top 10 in our coaches poll. You're right. Definitely the deepest region.
Interesting. There's going to be some great battles to close this region out, and it'll be interesting to see if you have that same kind of Region 4 domination come the state tournament. I think the big question is Davis legit when you look at a team that is undefeated in region play, 9-1 on the year, Mountain Ridge as well. Can they make a push to a semi or a championship game? Be fun to see as that state tournament comes up. But Region 4 certainly has a lot of depth.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, can Davis get to the semis? Can Mountain Ridge get to the semis? I think they can. But it wouldn't surprise me if you see three teams from Region 4 in those semifinals.
It'll be interesting to see when the bracket comes out on RPI how that all shakes out. Let's talk 5A, shall we? And look, Region 5, this is a region that I know early on you're like Bountiful, but there were some teams like, was Woods Cross or Box Elder. And, there were some teams throwing their hats in the ring. Viewmont, they have not lost a game in region play yet. Talk about this Region 5, Tim.
Yeah, it's a fun little region. It's the region I live in, and so I pay close attention to it. I've seen Bountiful a handful of times, and they are the favorites still in my mind to win that region. But you're right. Bonneville, Bountiful, Woods Cross, all playing better than I thought they would, and that's exciting for them. Box
Elder has some offense, too. We saw them this week against Woods Cross, and look, I think they trailed 4-2 in that one. They ended up winning that. Went on a 7-1 run for 2.5 frames and able to pull away from Woods Cross. They've got some offense in Anderson and company, or Andreasen and company, that can score some goals in a hurry. Region 6. All right. I think this is the Region 4 equivalent in 5A.
Yeah.
You've got Park City. Looks like a completely different team than week 1. Olympus, obviously, they are who we thought we were. Yeah. And then you have a team like Skyline that has come up. We've seen them. And this region, the top, looks really strong.
Yeah, it's a fun region, and it's an interesting region because they only play each other once, where most of these other regions we're talking about are playing each other twice. And so, Olympus Park City's coming up, Skyline Olympus, which is a big rivalry in all sports. Skyline's got to then play Park City as well. And so, like you said, it's going to be interesting. Skyline's sitting at 7-1 right now, just the one loss. And so, it's going to be interesting. Can they pull off an upset against a Park City or an Olympus? It's going to be fascinating coming down the stretch. And then you've got like East, right?
Well,
and East is playing pretty well.
I was going to ask you. I did not talk about East. Is East for real? They come in, or they're 5-2, right? This is before games being played late in the week. They're 5-2 on the year. They battled with Lone Peak. Yeah. Just, gave up 4 goals in the final frame. That game was tied.
Right.
Is East for real in Region 6?
I think so. It wouldn't surprise me if they, go in and beat Skyline and end up third in the region. I don't think they'll get Park City or Olympus. Those two teams are just too good.
Is that a sleeper team come playoff time?
Yeah, definitely. I could certainly see them, make at least the quarterfinals. That wouldn't surprise me if you see the East there. And you never know in the playoff stage, right? And anything could happen, and they could be in that semifinal.
Let's talk Region 8. Alta. This team was so strong last year in that B division playoff, won it. You look at Timpview, they've just lost one region game. They will play this upcoming week. That's going to be a doozy. Alta at Timpview. Those two teams have been fantastic. Timpanogah's been, winning some games in that region. Alta, who do you like on the Hawks?
It starts with Berkeley Haroba. right? He's definitely their best offensive player, really leads that charge. The coach's son, Coach Hiroba, is a great coach, been coaching for years in the state. And then on defense, you've got, Andrew Perry, who's a nice sophomore player. But just a great team. They're kind of a hype team. They like to get things going. If they get on a roll, they're hard to stop.
We saw Timpview against Skyline, and a team that felt like, at times things dried up, at times things got rolling. If they're playing a consistent full game, can they match up with an Alta, contend for a region title?
I think so. The opposite side of being a hype team is if you get down, right?
Yeah.
And so they're kind of a roller coaster. And so if Timpview can catch them Alta on a bad day and Timpview has a great day, then anything's possible, and you might see that.
All right, let's go Region 9, shall we? This feels like coin toss region, and I don't mean that negative, but it's like pick a team. We were talking before the show, and we had some varied opinions, and I think it speaks to a lot of teams that can compete for a region championship in Region 9.
Yeah, and so coming in, the coaches voted that Wasatch was going to be the preseason favorite, but, they've kind of taken their lumps here and there. Obviously, Maple Mountain is leading the region right now. You talk about a team like Spanish Fork, whose RPI graph is just almost vertical, straight up, playing really well right now. And then you've got just these other teams, you've got newcomers Cedar Valley, Salem Hills, Provo. It's just a fun region, like you said, a coin toss region. It's going to be fascinating to see how that one plays out.
Wasatch is a team that's been a bit of a head scratcher to me.
Sure.
We saw them against Skyline. They lost that on a overtime. Was it overtime or no? They lost on a goal in the last minute. Yeah, they were competitive with Skyline. And yet they've had a couple games where they've stubbed their toe, haven't been able to get out.
Right.
Is this a team that has the pieces and it's just a matter of timing coming together, or what's missing right now?
I think that is it. It's a new coach, and so that can always play a factor. Kevin Wallace, he's a great coach. He's actually coached at Wasatch before. But, just getting everything right. And really, Dane, it's only April 21st, right?
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if who peaks at that right time. And I would love to see Wasatch play their best lacrosse in May.
Is Maple Mountain kind of the leader, or is it Wasatch?
I think only time will tell.
Okay.
At this point, it's neck and neck. But I think I would give it to Wasatch just because they've been around longer.
Yeah.
And not that that's necessarily a great reason, but a lot of history there. Maple Mountain, a new team. Pretty much that whole region is a new team. Didn't exist just a couple of years ago.
Wasatch was going to have a move in that guy could sling it 90 miles an hour, ended up tearing up his knee before the season started. They're missing that piece right now, the Wasps are, but still a lot of pieces, a lot of good offense.
Right.
We've seen some good play in the cage as well for the Wasps. Watch out for them. This is going to be a fun region. None of these teams had winning records in their non-region play. So it's one where it's like, hey, clear the non-region, right? A chance to kind of get some confidence in the system, understand what you're doing, and now go play for a region championship. It's going to be a fun region to track.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I love about having these regions is it gives you something to play for.
Yeah.
Right? You're going for that region title, that region trophy, something to put in your trophy case. It's awesome.
I love having a target there.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about that in other sports. Regions matter. # regions matter. All right, let's move to 4A. I think a lot of people prior to the year, you and me included, thought Green Canyon's going to be the team in 4A. I mean, you could almost etch it on the trophy.
Sure.
Hasn't played out that way in the start of Region 11.
It hasn't. Skyview has really come in hot. Their two losses are to two 6A teams in Weber, and I can't remember the other one, but just a 2-goal loss to Weber. And we talked about Weber in that Region 1 as being one of the top 3, top 4 teams. And so Skyview's playing really well. Got the win over Green Canyon the other day. Ridgeline has also been playing really well. Green Canyon, I need to email Coach Oldham and see what's going on. Maybe there's more to the story, but definitely still a team to watch out for in the playoffs.
It's still a team in Green Canyon. Look, this is not a team that will not compete, right?
Absolutely.
They still have weeks. You're going to make the playoffs. And at that point, you just got to put together 3-4 games, and you got yourself a championship. But I think the win by Skyview over Green Canyon shows, hey, look, this is not a runaway, and it'll be fun to track.
Yeah, and those two schools very close in proximity. Coach Oldham, the Green Canyon head coach, coached at Skyview before Green Canyon was even a thing. Won a Class B championship with them a handful of years ago. Just a fun little rivalry. That's a great little region, that little northern region, you know, and just a bunch of rivalries, bunch of people who've known each other for years. It's fun to watch that one play out.
And then Region 10. Look, a couple programs with proud histories, but some young newcomers trying to kind of get their feet wet. You look at Juan Diego, Waterford, Utah Military as well. Tim, I mean, when you look at these teams in Region 10, how well do they stack up against some of the Region 11 teams when you look at 4A as a classification in whole?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it's weird to have a region with just 3 teams, right? It's just kind of weird, but it works. And so you look at Juan Diego, they were without their best offensive player for the first half of the season. He's come back and really made a difference for Juan Diego. Like we mentioned, they beat Wasatch earlier this week alone. Waterford, young, they lost some transfer talent. And then you have UMA, who's an up-and-coming program, got their first win ever this week, which is awesome. They beat Jordan in overtime. So just exciting to see them. How do they stack up? I would say Juan Diego definitely stacks up. Wouldn't surprise me to see them in the championship game. But, again, you never know when the playoffs come around.
Going to be fantastic. We've given you kind of a bit of a preview of some of the region races that are going on right now. A lot of great region games coming up to close out the year. Things far from over. Talk about the state tournaments, going back to a 6A, 5A, 4A format with tournaments this year running through Westminster and then ending at Zions Bank Stadium. Going to be a fun ride. Tim and I will have you all the way. Tim, I'm going to ask you for a sleeper in 6A, 5A, and 4A. Let's start with 6A.
Sure. 6A, I think, would be I'd probably go with Davis in this case. I would love for them to prove everyone wrong. Their kind of shtick is that they don't play well in the playoffs, and I would love for them to prove them wrong. Rhett Rice, just a phenomenal player. He's got this shot that is just so fast because he's got this quick release. You can't see it coming. My 5A sleeper would probably, I don't know if they're much of a sleeper, but it'd probably be like an Alta.
Okay.
I could definitely see them. Obviously, the favorites there, again, are Olympus, Park City. But it wouldn't surprise me to see Alta in that final game. And then 4A, I'd probably go with probably Skyview. I know that they're not necessarily the sleeper, but that's probably who I'd think, just because Green Canyon was so favored coming into this season.
Okay. I won't make you fly solo. Yeah. Is Westlake a sleeper in 6A?
Like we said, that their region is so deep.
Yeah.
They're a great team. If they were in another region, we would certainly be talking about them,
yeah.
Winning that title. But in order for them to get to the semis or to the finals, they're going to have to play their best lacrosse that they've ever played. Is it possible? Absolutely. Will it happen? We'll see.
I was going to roll with the Thunder as my sleeper. I just didn't know if a Region 4 team could be a sleeper. So I'll run with Westlake as my sleeper in 6A.
Okay.
5A, I'll go Bountiful.
Okay.
We saw Bountiful early against Park City.
Yep.
They gave Park City everything that they wanted, and that was without their best offensive player. I'll roll with Bountiful as a sleeper in 5A. And 4A, that's tough.
It's tricky. It's tricky.
I'll roll Ridgeline.
Okay.
We've got to be good friends, us and Ridgeline. So I'll roll Ridgeline in 4A as my sleeper. Talking about a lot of great games coming up. Tim and I will have you the rest of the way through the boys action, all the way to a state championship. And I want to thank you for joining us. Catch us every week right here on Game Night Live Rewind. We have our Game of the Weeks. Those announced on Twitter and on Instagram as well. Follow us on our social media platforms. And make sure you check out Utah Lax Report for the best coverage throughout the state, both boys and girls. Interviews, podcasts, everything you need. Utah Lax Report has you taken care of. Tim, thanks for joining us. And we'll catch you next time right here on Game Night Live Rewind's Lacrosse video presented by Heidemann and Associates.